Three, two, one. What's up, Kelly?
Hi.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. We're here finally. Comfortable. Made it again.
Made it. We're good.
How are you feeling today?
Great. How are you?
Pretty good. Thank you. Pretty good. So welcome to the Grand Rapids podcast. The Grand Rapids B&E podcast number 11. So we are on a roll here.
How's your hair?
My hair's doing something. It's doing something.
I like it.
Thanks. It's just growing out. That's all it's doing.
You don't ever wear it without your bun anymore, so I like it when it's down.
Yeah, I've actually worn it without a bun maybe once this month, so this is the second time, I think. Just trying to see where it goes.
Today?
Yeah, no. I was supposed to get it yesterday, but yeah, we're supposed to be quarantined, so how many people are not getting haircuts right now?
It's gonna look like a shag muffin.
Yeah.
I do feel bad for girls that get lash extensions. That does really suck because when you do go back, you do have to pay the full price again, which is like $200.
Yeah.
So that does suck.
It's a lot. I mean, guys spend between $50 and $100 a month getting their haircut. That's average.
Well, guys that actually look good, yeah.
Guys that actually look good and care. Not supercuts or bow ricks.
I used to not care about haircuts at all. And then I saw the magic.
And then you saw what I do.
Yeah, I did. In the basement.
Yeah. Yep, in the basement. Back in the day, in the basement.
Jinsey lived in a basement when I met him.
Yeah, that was rough times. Transitioning. We've all had our rough times.
I was living at my parents' house with my kid's dad, not in a relationship, and you were in the basement of your best friend's mom's house.
This is now almost 3 years.
Yeah.
2.5 technically.
Yeah.
So come a long ways in 2 years. It goes to show how much you can do in 2 years, because I was at the bottom pits of my life 2 years and a half ago. But thankfully, things change, and thankfully there's God, if you believe in God or not. I'm an amateur.
Yeah, do you think that was a good thing or a bad thing that we met when we were both at the bottom of the barrel?
It is what it is. People meet whenever they meet. So catching up everybody.
Great explanation.
Great explanation. I don't know. What other explanation is there? People meet when they meet.
Go on.
So Grand Rapids is coming up. There's been New York, they're enforcing tons of laws, and I think martial laws coming in play almost in New York.
Care. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
All right. No.
I'm kidding.
So yeah, it's pretty bad what's going on there. I don't know if Michigan is getting anywhere near that.
Yeah, we have the second highest death toll rate, and the president's definitely after our governor right now for sure. Yeah, taking some heat.
What did you say earlier that President Trump is?
He was just slamming Governor Whitmore. Is it Whitmore or Whitmer?
Whitmore, I think. I don't know.
He was just going at her for not taking the proper precautions, which I don't know what that would be at this point. I'm not educated enough.
Is that martial law at this point?
I don't even know who implements martial law. I don't know if it's the president or the governor or what, but yeah,
it's a federal law.
She's getting some heat, especially for being a woman. She's getting heat, which is bull.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, President Trump he's an interesting fella.
Yeah, I mean, it's good. I can
see why people hate him, but I can see why he's where he is, in his position.
Yeah,
it's both. But
I was listening to Ray Dalio's TED Talk this morning. Sorry. I was listening to Ray Dalio's TED Talk this morning, and he was talking about making decisions when you're at the top of the chain, like making decisions as an entrepreneur and then making decisions as a leader, and then if those two things go hand in hand, how many mistakes you're gonna make. And none of us have been in this position before in history.
Yeah.
And then you add being like in a leadership position. I mean, we have a very minor leadership position.
Right.
Like being the owners of Crunchy Munchies with no brick and mortar, only one employee, but our kitchen is just like we rent it. It's not ours. We don't have a mortgage to pay on a building. Like, we're in a pretty easy position compared to the people with a brick and mortar, and then compared to the governor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't imagine the pressures that are on at that level, at that height, you know. Definitely puts a different perspective on things. Yeah, I don't know. I think I hope this all blows over eventually and everybody can get along, chill.
I'm like, I don't want it to end.
You like it?
Yeah, I
You
decided
like
to like it.
the isolation and
I decided I like it.
yeah. I liked it the second day. I realized this is gonna be a good thing because this isn't gonna go away anytime soon.
I just like it because, like I said yesterday or on our last podcast, the whole checks thing coming in, it gives people enough time to be scared and to start their healing cycle. But if they really put everything back to normal on April 13th, people aren't going to learn a lesson. Like, people are going to revert exactly back to how they were.
I think most people won't. I mean, I don't think this is a lesson. It's not like a lesson necessarily that we have to learn per se. I mean, there's a lot to pull from, but it's hard because it's not a direct correlation to what happened in China, right? Matter of fact, it's more a lesson to us, like, fundamental things matter.
Yeah, I think that we're listening to that video of people that are like coming out of lockdown. And I think it's cool that everybody, like, I have different thoughts on this. We've already talked about it. Like, I think this thing's going to go on for a while and it's coming from something different. But everybody that's going through it has the same, it doesn't matter if you're in China, it doesn't matter if you're in India, it doesn't matter if you're in the US. Like, we're all going through the same exact thing at the same exact time. And it's up to us to become a better person or stay a shitty person. Like, whatever you want to do. Like,
but what if you don't know you're a shitty person?
Then you're gonna face it. There's no way you can't.
Somebody's either telling you or...
Yeah, but if nobody's telling you, you're in isolation. Nobody's telling you. Like, you know when you're a bad person. You know it.
Yeah, I think most people have consciousness enough to know it, you know. But people choose, right?
I mean, I know a guy that is not and thinks that he's the best and doesn't acknowledge that. However, at the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow, you know if you're a shitty person or not. Yeah. That's my belief.
It comes down to what you believe of yourself and all your values and stuff. Unfortunately, you know, some people won't change after this, but the cool thing is I think that it is creating some sort of world seismic change overall. Like, the big picture of things is going to change. You don't have this static, consistent, get to work every day and make ends meet because you have a family to raise. Now it's like I have to survive for myself and my family. So it's a different story now a little bit.
Yeah. I don't want it to end, I think, because I don't want to go back to... It's not even that I want to live on my own timeline. Like, I don't mind waking up early and, like, getting to it and working 14-hour days. I don't mind it. But I don't like the feeling of everybody else stressed out because of their job. Like, I chose entrepreneurship because it's a little more chill in the everyday life while you're putting out fires, if that makes sense.
Somewhat.
You're not under somebody else's wrath.
Right.
You just eliminate one person's bull.
Agreed. I think this is a great time for everybody to start. I think we talked about this in the last podcast that everybody's picking up now the pieces that were broken. Yeah. You know, I've thought about a lot of the things that need to be done in my house or need to be done in my life or people I need to talk to. Just yesterday, you saw, we did a Zoom call with the family. That was freaking awesome.
Yeah, like 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours of a Zoom. But, you know, it was like, yeah, we have work to do, but what other time is there to do that?
Yeah, I typically would have gotten stressed that we decided to, like, compromise our time, even though it's not compromising time because it's family.
Right. That's where it gets
And that's
tricky, right?
where you're like, wow, I was really not a good person. Like, to think that, I mean, you have to have boundaries. You can't always be on the phone for 2.5 hours with your
Right.
family. But, I mean, it's just nice to be able to do it.
Yeah, I wonder how many people do that, where it's like, because I know I had the tendency of putting everything aside that I had planned and then just doing that one thing that's most essential with family, right, or friends. Like I used to do that a lot, and it would cut into my time. But I wonder how many people do that, because the real successful people that I know don't do that.
Yeah, we have time management and time blocks, and yeah,
You
it's
know what I
something
mean?
we're both working on for sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like when something's important and urgent, it's okay to give it space. And I think in your day, it's okay to have that wiggle room to move around and then shift things around. But unless there are deadlines, like deadlines that pertain to other people, like stakeholders, board members, things like that, customer deadlines that you're going to launch is one thing. Things have to be sharp, and you can't budge on that, you know.
Yeah.
Like when we used to meal prep for our customers, what we would do is we'd segment these 18 hours on the weekends to do that. And then what you do is you don't allow any interruptions. You can't.
Not
You know,
even,
it's like,
you can not even pick up your phone.
yeah, it's like you have to be sharp and you have to be on everything. Everything has to be done properly. The food has to be measured, heated well, cooked well, seasoned well, packaged well. Like it's everything. It's a production.
Labeled well.
Labeled well. It has to be. It's a full production, so you have to be sharp. And you know, I wonder how much your job allows that. I'm actually really curious about that. I feel like a lot of jobs are pretty laid back.
Yeah, I think I work better under other people's timelines rather than my
Yeah.
own timeline. So
It's pretty common. Yeah, it's pretty common.
But yeah, I wonder.
Coffee's so good.
Yeah, we were gonna make this on live, but we didn't. We'll
Yeah,
do
we're
it
gonna
another
make
day.
you organic coffee live with like good stuff. I mean, it's this delicious coffee. It's like,
So it's better
nicely
than Starbucks.
roasted.
Not better than Madcap, but better than Starbucks.
yeah, my cab has got it up there. But if I put up a coffee distillery, what would it be? A
Distillery?
coffee distillery? What the heck?
Cafe.
I'm thinking brewery.
Yeah.
A cafe, that would be nice.
Yeah, I wonder. I want to dive into breaking your toxic cycle, because that's the hardest part. Is you have all these people that are like, okay, I'm willing to work on myself, I'm ready to go, and then what? Like, you face all these problems and you write down all these problems that you are doubting yourself about. You're gonna go to one extreme of having super low self-confidence when you're out of this, because you're gonna be like, wow, I am a bad person.
Yeah.
Or you know how to handle it. And if there's only 14 days, I think that you're triggered back into your cycles. And I know I will be. If I only do something for 14 days, I'll go back to the way I was. It takes me 30 to 90 days to like,
Of consistent application, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So this is great. What cycles do you find yourself in? Actually, I talked about that in my live this morning, and we talked about it briefly yesterday because you brought it up, and I thought that was a really good topic. So we're gonna break down, the psychology aspect of the cycles, the toxic cycles you go in your own head, and then the toxic feedback loops that get entangled with your family or friends or loved ones or whoever you're with. They're constantly around, right? Because it happens. It's just, it happens. And so we're not perfect as humans. And what happens is you have these thoughts, and then you have triggers. So let's see if we can break down the components. You have thoughts, which are based on your beliefs, habits, and values, right?
And where do those come from?
So your beliefs come from your upbringing. Your habits come from your upbringing as well, or whatever you picked up along the way. And then your beliefs were formed early on as well.
Right.
Values typically change depending on what you see good or whatnot, right? So then you have that. And then what happens is these habits, if they're based on false ideas or assumptions or misconceptions, then you have triggers about things. And so if you take on after your parents, I know like for one of my parents, they have very strong triggers, right? So for me growing up, I thought that was normal. And a trigger is like getting angry at getting angry at small things, right? And I thought this was like a normal thing. So it took me a long time to get past my anger issues. Even though I wasn't an angry person, I just had triggers.
What were some of your triggers?
I mean, it could be anything that
Do you want me to name one for you? Because I can do it.
I'm
really
sure you
quickly.
have a slew of them. Like, one of my triggers is easily just not doing things in sequential order, right? It's like, let's suppose making your bed. Making your bed, you can, you pull up the undersheet and then, or you tug the undersheet so they're nice and smooth, and then you lay over the undersheet and smooth that out too, and then you put your top cover.
Oh yeah.
And then, right, this is me hypothesizing.
Okay.
And then you put your pillow sheets and you put them, like if I was in the military and perfect, like that's how I would do it, right? I just get it done as easy as possible, whatever. So, like if that's out of order and you start from the bottom down, then it takes more work, more time, and then it doesn't get done well, right? So my trigger is, why do it the opposite way when the easiest way is from the bottom up?
Right.
So that's probably where my triggers come in. But is that bad? Is that like a bad trigger?
So you're saying that our whole friendship is a trigger?
Basically. No, I mean, so, it's like you can spend half your life doing things inefficiently, wasting time, or you can spend your life doing things properly and being efficient.
Yeah. No, I think for you, like, it's easier for me to explain it on this side, I feel like, because so when I raise my voice at you or when I flip out, that triggers you to shut down because your parent did that,
Yeah, I mean, in another way, it's like there's no sense of arguing. So
yeah, but I mean, you wouldn't shut down necessarily. Like, you don't yell back.
Right.
People either yell back or shut down.
True.
So you
yeah.
shut down because
Yep.
that was a childhood thing. And then you have the like use the right tool for the right job type of thing. So the sequential order. So I think those are your two main triggers.
And it's funny because they're actually they're triggers that showed up after a couple years ago. Like I developed the habit and the belief, and so they became triggers. But I think if you look further, triggers are actually something embedded deeper within you. Like it's just an attitude or a way of behaving.
Absolutely.
Well,
then you do it repetitively. Like when Taimana makes a mistake the wrong way, I try to correct him now. I'm realizing to tell him the more times you do it wrong, the more wrong you're going to be.
Right.
And I wish I would have thought about it that way, because the more times I practice doing something wrong, the better I get at wrong.
Yeah. And that's the challenge. That's why I justify feeling triggered, even though there are better ways of going about it. But yeah, absolutely. I do think that's right. The more wrong you practice something, the more wrong you will get it, and the worse the results you will get. So, which leads to victimhood, and it leads to complaining and blaming others, and then a slew of other symptoms that can be like BPD related, like borderline personality disorders. Because then the problem is there's no way to base your value system on. Everything is kind of on the fly.
Right.
And then negative emotions kind of proliferate and they grow wild. So it's like, that's why BPD is such a hard symptom to diagnose for therapists.
What's that book? That's a really good book about BPD. Walking on Eggshells.
Walking on Eggshells, yup. And
it's a really good book.
And then there's another one, I Hate You, Leave Me, I Love You, but Let Me Go, or something like that. It's like, leave me alone, but I love you, something like that.
Yeah.
I forget the name, but I read Walking on Eggshells and then briefed through the other one, and it's just, it displays like the personality issues that you go through. But I believe, from having read that, is that you start off with these small things, right? Like when a child lies, like, so we've caught Taimana and Rayal lying on several occasions, but that's what kids do. I mean, I did it countless times. So I remember as a kid. And then if you don't catch that, then that starts to distort their reality, because what happens is we cushion their fall, right? We clean up their messes, and then they're not responsible for the mess they made. So what happens is they start to believe that because I don't have to clean up my mess, I'm also okay to lie. And then now my reality is formed around how people treat me, how people treat me, and how are they around me. And I can do whatever I want. Now, I went through this myself.
And it's a very much so like, you don't talk to me the right way. Or
Right.
You don't know.
It becomes a self-entitlement problem.
My thing I would tell my mom is like, you don't know how to talk to me. Or I'd be like, you don't know. You don't get it. You just don't get it. My mom would be like, what don't I get?
Right. And it's probably true on both ends because there's always a true and a false, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it's true. The parent doesn't get it because the child is experiencing higher levels of emotion as a teenager, probably.
Right.
But what the parent's not doing is they're not sitting down and having full conversations and building extra rapport with the kid. And so the kid feels like, okay, what's the one value parent to child that you should be having no matter what? Tons of FaceTime. Tons of FaceTime, right? FaceTime, meaning like not over your phone, but like actual FaceTime is the number one love language that trumps all, and it speaks volumes as to being present. And so kids can read that as my parent is present. So when your parent is not present, no matter what, that speaks volumes in itself.
Right.
So kids can pick up on that, and then they think, well, you don't get me. You don't understand me. Well, you're not taking the time to get your child.
Right.
That's really what it comes down to.
Right.
Now, I'm no child psychologist, but just common sense.
Yeah. It takes a lot. I mean, it's breaking things down in such a simple form that it seems complicated. But I guess if you're going through all these things, you don't know where to start. For me, it was instinctual. Like, it was instinctual to write. It was instinctual to YouTube stuff. It was instinctual to Google. But I realized that's not instinctual for 98% of people.
Right.
Which
I guess
is wild to me.
Well,
but
go back 20 years in time. 20 years ago, I was 15 years old. Crazy enough to think. So I was 15 years old at 20 years ago. And I remember the internet was just beginning to become a thing, right? AOL, dial-up was a thing. And we didn't have access to information like we know now. So it's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And if you think about it, the evolution of information has become more accessible. But here's the difference, is that it doesn't matter if you were born then or born now. The fact that people back then, whenever they needed to figure something out, there were Webster dictionary, there were encyclopedias, there were libraries and book sources of information. And so what you had to do, believe it or not, is you had to go find these books, search through the pages, read the book, and get the information.
Did you have an encyclopedia?
I had like a half edition of a full set.
I had the whole thing. Like, my mom got my sister and I the whole. I mean,
they were beautiful, right?
Yeah, we had
beautiful to look
like,
at.
Our book was like encyclopedia.
I mean, meaning nobody read them.
They really were pretty. They had like a really nice hardcover and gold
they're like
pages.
$1,000 encyclopedias, like full of information. And I never read. I mean, I would read them, but I'm like, gosh, who wants to read through all this stuff?
Yeah, I didn't.
And they're full of information. Your sister did, so she's so smart.
Yeah, I know. Master's degree, no school.
But you know, the difference is the person that was willing to do the work, and now the work has been diminished by hours. Like, instead of reading a book and taking 8 to 20 hours to read that book to find one piece of information, you can Google it specifically, like shoot a target and nail it on the head exactly what you want. Whether by a video on YouTube, whether by finding a blog online, or finding some credible source that can bring that information to you, and within minutes you have the piece of content or information that you needed. And I realized, like, I've learned so much of what a college degree would have gave me in a short span of time just doing that.
But what do you do? I mean, that still doesn't help. I don't. It's hard to talk to people and to tell them. You can't tell them what to do because they won't listen to you. You can tell them to go to Google and type whatever in, and they still won't do it. promise that.
Right.
But I guess for themselves, like if you're really serious about buckling down, for me, like our steps might be different. I don't even think we've ever broken it down together, but like for me, I broke down my problem, what I think is wrong with me, like what I don't like about myself, what I really love about myself. Actually, I did the opposite way. I was always told to give yourself a poop sandwich.
Yep.
Positive, opposition, positive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, this is what I really love about myself. This is what I don't like.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I don't like about what I don't like why I don't like what I do, and then another positive about it. And then I just trailed off from there. Like that was my but other than that, like what do you do to get started? I mean, meditations are a big thing, writing's a big thing, and reading.
Basically, if you're in a toxic loop with yourself or others, well, the first step is just acknowledge it. I mean, awareness is first and foremost, right? So coming to that point, just being honest with yourself and looking in the mirror, essentially is the metaphor. It's taking inventory of yourself and saying, like if you don't know anything about yourself and you have no idea that that's even a notion, or you have no idea that's an idea, right? Then you just go, you know what? I get angry all the time. Write that down. I like to go outside. Write that down. And then once you start building on these things as to who you are, you start taking an inventory of what it is that you like and don't like. And then you can say that about yourself. Like, but it takes a lot of guts to be like, I don't like this about myself. Because
and it's a lot of writing and drawing. I mean, I have like drawings.
Yeah. There's a lot of steps that come into play when talking about who you are and breaking that down and describing it, what's the meaning of that and how that relates to the world, your family, yourself, and who do you plan to be and how do you want to change. Like it's a lot. It's a lot. So I can see why people don't do it. So if you don't have work ethic to begin with, that's going to be a challenge to do.
I think I realized a couple days ago, I'm like, why do people continue to act the way they do? And then why are relationships so essential? And I'm like, well, I think relationships are so essential because you develop people that you trust. So then you have trusting relationships. And then you act a certain way. So if nobody that you love or trust stops you from acting a certain way, you'll continue to act exactly how you are.
Yep. And it's enabled.
And that's just another form of delusion for sure. But it
goes back to childhood, right? Because if your parents didn't stop you and they loved you and you trust them, then why would the world stop you if they love you less?
Right. So then you're going to be drawn to a workplace which
has the same values as what you grew up with, possibly.
Right. Which is hilarious because a lot of times parents are like, I don't know why you're hanging out with that group of kids.
Right.
I don't know why you're going to that person's house. I don't know why you're going to college there. I don't know why you're going to work there. I don't know why you're being an entrepreneur. It's like, you did this.
Like, yeah.
You taught me this.
Right. And yeah, I think a lot of parents don't take responsibility for their kids' actions at times. And it's like, yeah, it's your kids' actions, but you brought them up, you raised them. And a lot of times kids don't always grow up in the environment of the parents. However, a lot of what is learned comes from early childhood, ages 4 to 7, right? That's about the age range.
Yeah. That's
where consciousness really starts to like grow.
Yeah. And the 8 to 12 is pretty important too.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. Well, they're different because formative years are 4 to 7, and then I don't know, what would it be, like creative years, 8 to 12?
It's 8 to 12 is like your attachment to adults and people, and like your relationships are beginning to form, whereas as a kid it's more developmental, like love and understanding what life has as a whole to offer as a foundation.
Right. Absolutely.
But you can't fall victim to any of that either. Like you can't blame your parents for that crap.
And that's the thing, is you don't want to stay blaming, because blaming doesn't take care of the problem. And even though it feels good, it doesn't take care of the problem. It passes the problem, but you still keep the problem. It's the problem.
Yeah.
You still keep the problem.
It's really hilarious how, I posted a Facebook status today about what the biggest obstacle has been in all of this for people. And there's a lot of positivity, but you really see the negative people. They're like, I hate the people that I work with, and people are so rude, and just trying to get through this anxiety and depression. You know how it is. And I'm like, dude, stop being such a victim to your parents' crap, essentially. Like, that's
but
your
people
parents
don't know.
talking.
You know, they don't know, and that's a sad excuse, but it is the excuse, I think.
But anger really screws you over, because that type of person is going to get mad about it, and then you're either going to have the person that takes the time, develops a relationship with this person that doesn't deserve to have a relationship developed with, and then you take time, you really like pour into this person, taking a risk on them, and then they might just get mad at you in the end. Or you're the type of person that's like, hey dude, like, shut up.
Right.
You sound like an idiot. And he's like, you sound like the guy in the gas station. You like, F you. No, F you.
Right,
like,
right.
That type of conversation.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and that guy got triggered because I called him out. Guys, this guy at the gas station, 28th Street here in Grand Rapids, Burlingame, 20th Street Burlingame party store, sneezes all over his hand. This is literally the Friday before the entire breakout. So I think it was the 15th to the 14th of March. And I knew the coronavirus was coming to hit. Wipes his face, snot and everything. Doesn't even like clean his hands and grabs the change. And I thought,
so gross.
That's wild to me. And I called him out, and he got mad. He started swearing at me and kicked me out of the store. I walked out of the store, but he attempted to kick me out. I'm like,
So
I'm not fighting you or touching you, my friend. Like, not doing that.
But that's what angry people do. They're just like, oh, you did that. No,
Yeah.
you did that. And it's very childish.
But and you know what? Yes, but I could tell by his demeanor, he's not taking responsibility for himself
Yeah.
all his life.
Right.
The way he carried himself, he did not look very up to par. And so it was easy for him to like to kick me out or fight me, because that was what he's been doing all his life. He's probably miserable like that, unfortunately.
Isn't that funny how unhappy, angry people are just like ugly? That's really mean.
Yeah, it's true though.
But they're
it
just
makes them
like,
ugly.
their skin is ugly, like their eyes look tired and worn down. Like if you really look at somebody that is not a nice person, you can tell. Like a happy, vibrant person has really good skin.
Yeah. It's like the physiological effects of their internal state, their consistent mindset starts to take place and show up in their external body language, like the way they carry themselves. And yeah, like you said, their skin, like it starts to show up. It's crazy how it does.
Yeah.
It starts to show up in every part of their being. And that's why I believe that, books like Think and Grow Rich and As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, and these timeless books that have been created that talk about, even in scripture in the Bible. Like, I'm an amateur in the Bible, but if you look at scripture, which is ancient history written down to help guide humans across life, it's like it helps you meditate on things that are proper so that you can become a good person. Because our minds are like, I don't know if you ever thought about this, but our minds are like dirt, where it's either very fertile for good information or very non-fertile. Like if you sow a good seed in bad fertile ground, like it's not very fertile at all, right? Maybe there's some stones, and maybe it's just hard and not very well cultivated. For that, you're not gonna get a good crop at all. Matter of fact, it's gonna choke and die. But if your mind is like good soil and you put a good word in there, you're gonna see results from that very quickly. And I think a lot of people don't have fertile soil.
Yeah. That's a really good analogy.
Yeah, I think the mind is very much like that, because it is a personally dark place, and I can go deep about this, but if you're putting bad stuff in good soil, it'll go bad eventually too.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's funny you said that, because in meditation this morning, my mind went to, who are you when things get boiled down? And I'm like, why did those words come in my head? And then I'm like, okay, well, when things like boil down, what does that mean? And then I'm thinking about like those nasty Tofurkey dogs I made the other day. I'm thinking about that in my meditation and how the water boiled down and it just like smelled bad and it like burnt to the pan.
Or your vegan turkey dogs.
Yeah, they were so gross.
Oh, they were terrible.
So I thought about those and how like the water boiled down, and I'm like, when it boiled down to it, it just like wasn't good, and then like the food wasn't good, like nothing about it was good.
Yeah.
And then you think about when you put the water on the stove, you boil the water, and I'm like, sometimes I boil water for tea, sometimes I boil water like to put humidity in the kitchen, whatever. And that's not a good thing or it's not a bad thing. It's just like when the water boils down, it's like, cool, it's done.
Yeah, what's left?
Yeah, like it's just, it made the air nice. It made my tea. That's cool.
Right.
And then I think about our vegan pancakes, French toast that we make, or the pancakes that we make. And I think about the syrup that goes on top of it with the fruit. And I'm like, when that boils down, it's so good.
Yeah.
Like it boils into the most like yummy, like sugary jelly jam thing.
Actually, I really like where you're going with this. Yeah, I really like where you're going with this.
That's where my mind was in meditation.
Right. Well, it's got a lot of truth because it's such a truthful part of who we are, because you can layer your life to appear as whatever you want it to, especially nowadays in social media. And the truth is, that is a surface layer of what's really happening. But when you break it down, what's going on is then you have challenges personally. Maybe you have with, and we all struggle with this, but particular cases of self-discipline that you're not quite getting to. And then you have communication issues, and then you have childhood trauma and triggers. And then you have toxic relationships, and then you have a bad environment, and then work sucks, and these are layers, right? But then on top of it all, you take a picture and you put a selfie up and it's like, life is great. And it's like, well, let's boil it down, right? Let's burn the selfie. Let's burn the thoughts in the forefront. Let's take away childhood trauma. Let's take away your nice car. Let's take away that nice house. Let's take away what you think are your friends. Let's take away what are your external activities, right? Like everything going on right now, the pandemic, right? You can't go out. You can't socialize. You can't just go to the grocery store and shop. So you take all this away and you boil it down. And what boiling down means is like you're going against the grain of the natural flow of things. And you distill things to the very essence. So now you're at home sitting by yourself, and you have food,
hopefully,
right? Hopefully, shelter, a clean environment to stay clean in, and your kids or your family, and you're breathing and healthy. So 5 or 6 very important things. And that's it. And then when you boil it down to that, and nobody wants to be in that position alone, but from those 5 fundamental things per se, you can then recreate something more powerful that has meaning, I believe.
For sure.
And I think a lot of people don't think like that because you don't have to think like that. We are cushioned by society's beautiful technological market advances that we can purchase. We can purchase things for a house and create it and build it. We live in one of the most amazing times and countries in the world. And
we have apps that you can, I saw the app, you can enlarge your eyes, skinny your chin out, raise your cheekbones, make your boobs bigger, make your butt bigger, and like elongate your thighs.
Yeah, how productive is that for human psychology?
Dude, I did it to one of my pictures because I wanted to see what it looked like.
Right.
It took me like 40 minutes to figure it out and do it, which I figure like you're somebody that actually does it all the time. It's not like a process anymore at that point.
Yeah.
But I mean, at least 20 minutes to edit.
Yeah, so how much invested time was that? And then the question is, how meaningful is that for your life?
Right.
How many more likes will you get? Well, how many more likes will you get is really the question.
Yeah.
And then, is that sustainable and does it bring long-term meaning?
Yeah. How many photos can you edit on the staircase and against the chimney? And,
right.
Like,
it's just
what are you gonna do?
For what?
Who are you?
So it's really cool to think about boiling down to the essence of the fundamentals in life and getting back to basics. And I think this is such a great place to be It's really comforting, to be honest. And a lot of people that are experiencing anxiety, I just think you have a lot of trauma, triggers, a lot of unanswered things in your head that you need answers for.
If you're not taking advantage of this time, you're missing out.
Yeah,
That's my
major.
I woke up this morning and another thought in meditation is kind of like, if you're not taking advantage of this time, F you. Like F you.
But everybody has their dignity to do that.
That's fine. That's whatever. But that's just my thought on it. I'm like, you're to the point, you're at the second week. Like, if you're still wallowing in your stuff, like, screw you.
You're a piece of shit.
Yeah.
I don't have any qualms saying that. I mean, men that are not reflecting on their actions and their future right now you're not going to do well. You're just not going to do well at all. You're not going to come out of this better unless somehow you don't have to think about your actions. But I don't know a single human that doesn't.
We have a variety of friends, I think, that vary from like churchgoers to the most wild side. And I mean, and we're friends with all of them, and I think that's cool. But that also gives us perspective from all those angles.
Yeah.
And there's still people that are avoiding everything. There's people that are buckling down and getting into the word that normally wouldn't. And then there's people that are being wild and out every weekend that are still being wild and out every weekend as men and women. And I am really I'm scared for them.
Yeah. However, in their defense, it's my life is fine. Why should I change it? I mean, how do you answer that question?
Well, it's not.
Well, how do you know that?
I mean, it's obvious. Like, if you can't take a second to just
chill. Totally get it. So
you're running away from something if you're continuing the rat race.
But what if they don't know that? What if they can't see it? What if it's not obvious?
Well, obviously, because they're in it with the same group of people that are still willing to do it. Right. But if you can't notice that the whole world has stopped and you haven't, then you got other problems.
There's other problems for sure, I think. It's just crazy to think about.
You guys like how he questions me about everything.
Well, it's the same way I question myself, right?
I know, it's just devil's advocate. It's fine.
It's just because I don't think there are only far few absolute answers. Only far few. And I think we look for absolute answers from the government, from our state, from our parents, and they're just really there's not absolute answers. There are ways of doing things, but they're not absolute answers. And there are very few absolute answers that we can pull from fundamentally. And those are hard to agree on, even because you have to involve science, spirituality, everybody involved, the short term and the long term results of that, and then the impact of those things. And that's an entire evaluation of things that is beyond. But
we've put our foot in our mouth a lot of times. However, we've dealt with the wrath of what our views, what my view, what your view is of relationships, and like having a title to a relationship, and people that function in life without a title to a relationship. And it's the same certainty. And there's a very fine line. Like, that's where I have definitely put my foot in my mouth. I get it. And you hit that point. But, like, there's this certainty that people do create too soon by committing to a relationship, because there is that certainty. And then, like, the government, there's all these steps. And then if you are a single 20 to 40-year-old, essentially, or older or younger, you look for that in a status. And then leads to an unhappy marriage. And
typically
then, I mean, you're in a marriage because you need status for what? Like your taxes? Like, why?
Well, there's many different reasons people marry, but I think one of the main ones is safety and comfort. I
think people marry because their parents want them to marry.
That's a big one too. It's definitely a big one.
Yeah.
Who knows, right? Anyway, we have to wrap it up because it is our time to go. We have many more topics to bring up and talk about as this pandemic continues and people are at home. Not just that, but local news going on in Grand Rapids. We haven't touched much on that, somewhat, but mostly just the psychology of what's going on. That's my biggest thing. Is I love talking about just breaking down what's happening in people's minds. I'm fascinated by people. So we'll have many more topics. If you guys have any questions, comments, or ideas that we can bring up, please post them below. Please like our page as well. Like this video. It would be great help to expand the conversation pieces that we're going to have this around our podcast. And of course, the point of this podcast is to bring conversation and entertainment to your life, enhancing your life, making it better, and then just divulging conversation pieces that are important for people.
Just adding value, being honest and transparent, and getting people to put their feelings out there.
Yeah.
This is the time.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.